Hi, and welcome back. We're going to embark on the last section of the course. This is our section 5, and we're going to talk about defining a release workflow with Azure in mind. So we're going to deploy to Azure. So what will you learn? Well, we're going to review some of the Azure resources that we're going to be working with. I'm not going to go through all the Azure resources. There's way too many to just talk about, but we will narrow down to the ones that we are actually going to use during our release process. Then we're going to have a discussion around service endpoints, just so you get an understanding of what a service endpoint is. And then we're going to show you how you configure those Azure service endpoints in VSTS to allow us to now connect to Azure to do our deployments. In the next section part, we're going to actually talk about releasing to Azure. And that'll be probably a rather long video, and the fact that we're going to actually build the pipeline for us for our deployment to Azure. So we're going to add the task, we're going to run the release, and so that'll take a little bit to get that done. Once we have released to Azure, then we can actually go and execute the tests, and that'll wrap us up, showing you how you execute tests. If you've been following along in this course, you'll know in the last section we actually did run tests after IIS was deployed. After we deploy to Azure, here we're going to do the same thing. We're going to run the same suite of tests just to make sure everything looks good and show you how that works within the Azure environment. In this course, we've been talking all about VSTS and release management. In this video, we're going to talk about the Azure resources. So in this section, if you watch the overview, we're going to do a deployment into the Azure environment. And so I want to make sure that we understand the types of Azure resources we're going to consume to do that release to the Azure environment. So what will you learn? Just a lap around the Azure resources. I'll show you the various ones we're going to work with, show you how to access the portal, the Azure portal that is, and how to get to the information you need. So the Azure resources, as you can tell from this list here in this image, we have quite a few different resources. We have SQL databases, a SQL server, we have app services, app service plans, storage accounts, app insights for monitoring. So we have a bunch of information in here that we're going to actually, and a lot of resources we're going to work with as part of our deployment. So with that, let's go into the demo environment and let's show you how you're going to access the portal, how you're going to be able to see the resources that you're going to be working with, and so on and so forth. So let's get in there and start to look at it. Okay, so we're here in the demo environment. I'm actually in the Azure portal. And you can see from the URL up there, we can access the Azure portal going to portal.azure.com. This was going to let you access the portal for your particular subscription. If you do not have an Azure subscription, there's a couple things you can do. One is if you have an MSDN, you can actually activate that subscription, and it'll give you $150 a month in credit each month, and it'll actually shut down when you hit that mark if you set it up that way. I think by default it's set up like that anyway, but you want to double check and make sure that you never go over that amount. You do have to enter a credit card information, but again, if you shut it down at the end of the $150 a month charge, then you won't get charged for anything. But then again, you won't be able to use Azure either. And if you don't have MSDN, but you still want to work with Azure, you can actually create an Azure subscription on your own. You'll get a $200 starting credit, and after that, it's a pay-as-you-go type of scenario. So in my world, I'm in my Azure dashboard here, and I have my subscriptions that I'm working with. And what I want to do is actually show you where we're going to start. So what we're going to start with is we're going to create this thing called an Azure Resource Group. An Azure Resource Group is the container which is going to hold all the artifacts that we're going to be producing and deploying into the Azure environment. So think of it as the big bucket that everything lives in. You can have multiple resource groups. You can see here from this, I have 4 that I really work with: the Artifactory, Jenkins, Mercury Health, and SonarQube. So those are my 4 resource groups that I like to work with. We're going to actually address the Mercury Health one. So once you have created a resource group, which you can do by going up here and clicking Add and creating one, it'll pop up the add screen. Just tell it where you want to put it, select your subscription, and you're ready to go. Okay, so I'm going to go into the Mercury Health resource group that we created. And let me drop that down. My subscription ID is in there. We don't want that to be shown. And what I want to do is I want you to see the different resources we've added. So you'll see in this middle column here, we have an overview. This is going to be the overview of the resource group and all the artifacts that are in that resource group. And again, you can look through one of these and dive into each one of these on your own if you choose to. So for example, we have a service plan and we have a app service. These are the web app services where our application is going to be deployed to. The SQL databases or SQL Server itself that we're going to be using as the back end. We have the Insights, Application Insights for monitoring. Application Insights is a great tool for monitoring your Azure environments. Then we have my storage accounts down here where we're going to store the VHDs or the disks that are associated with any of the setups that I have or any other information that I need to store. If you're using a virtual machine, for example, you would store the OS disk there as well as any other residual disks you're going to need. So with that, let me show you how we go about adding a resource. So we're going to click on this add option up here and it's going to bring up the library, and you can see there's a number of different options available. You just type something in and you'll find it. You can see we have Jenkins and Windows Server. We have a web app. We have SQL Server database. We have web app plus MySQL database, Barracuda firewalls, Terra databases. So there's a lot of different information in here in terms of the types of resources that you can start to add to this particular resource group. So with that, let me close this one and go back to the Mercury Health, and I can get to it through the breadcrumb trail up top here. Okay, so now that we've actually looked at some of the resources, what I want to do is just show you some of the options over here. You can see your activity log here, and this will tell you all the activity that's going on with this particular resource group. And right now there's nothing, but we can actually change that later on. Any of the resource costs that were going to be associated with it, so I don't have to worry about it. It's not supported in my subscription. The automation script, we're going to actually look at this when we go to deploy to Azure. This is what they call the Azure Resource Manager script, our template. And this is, think of it as infrastructure as code. If you've heard that term before, this is the code that defines my infrastructure. What we're going to do in later videos in this course is we're going to actually deploy our infrastructure using a script very much like what you see here. And so from this, you can actually work with the resource manager template and actually set it up to either custom deployment for yourself, or you can actually deploy it up here to a different resource group by clicking on deploy. So a lot of times when I'm working with these resource templates, I'll actually go out and create a little bit in Azure and for the thing that I need, let's say Key Vault. Okay, and I'm not sure on all the nuances of the Key Vault in the Azure Resource Manager template. I know some of them. So I'll create that Azure resource and I'll create the template, the automation script, and I'll just copy out the pieces I need and then work with those in my personal scripts that I'm writing. Down here, you can see we have the monitoring. So we have App Insights, and we have the different versions of App Insights in here. So let's go to Web Insights, and actually let's go to Web Dev. I think that would be a better one. And let's see what we can find there. If there's any information, you can see another one of these blades opens up. And you'll notice here that we don't have much going on here because I haven't done anything with the website yet. So again, that's very easy. We'll just close that one. And down here, you can actually open a support ticket. If your subscription manager is like an MSDN or a corporate one, you will have a support issue you can submit to. So you'll have some type of support plan, and then they'll allow you to create those support requests in case you need something from the Microsoft Azure team. Not something you're just going to ask questions on. There's forums for that, but this is true. I'm stopped. I can't work any further. There's something wrong with my subscription. There's something wrong with how I'm setting things up. Those types of things you would actually create a support request for. So I'm going to go back to my dashboard here. You can see the last thing I want to talk about a little bit is the dashboard. You'll see that we have various different artifacts on the dashboard that define everything from the subscriptions that I'm using and the forecasting of costs to the actual up in the right corner, all the resources that I'm laying out in my subscriptions.